So I am just over 2 weeks now into my journey of committing to tackling my fear of cold approaching hot girls, attractive girls that I see out in the wild, out in public. I've had crippling approach anxiety pretty much my whole adult life. And because of that, my dating life has been a little bit of a shambles, to be honest. It's been like I can sort of just take what I can get. And so I decided recently that I was going to actually tackle my approach anxiety head on, because relying on dating apps just fucking doesn't work, man. It's emasculating. And so, yeah, over the last 2 weeks, I have been practicing actually approaching attractive girls that I'm attracted to when I see them, pretty much regardless of the situation. Some situations are sort of more low stakes than others. Like there was one the other night in the supermarket. It was like 7:30 p.m. in the supermarket. There was hardly anybody around. She was by herself. So there weren't really any kind of witnesses. So the sort of social fear wasn't as strong. I could approach without really worrying about what people might think, Whereas other situations are far more high risk, like when she's with friends or family members or in the gym. But anyway, the reason I tell that story is in that time, in just those short, 2 weeks, I've approached and or complimented nearly 50 girls, right, that I'm attracted to. And I can tell you now, it is scary. Well, it certainly was scary to begin with, and it's already far less scary than it is. And it's interesting, it's changing from being scary to being exciting. It's, I don't know if you've heard it before, that anxiety is a very similar emotion to excitement, right? Apprehension it's very similar to excitement. And actually, when you do approach girls that you're attracted to, it is scary, but it's also exciting, right? And what happens is when you actually start doing it, you will find that your approach anxiety has been lying to you, and she won't react in any of the ways that you might fear that she will. And if anybody is around you that's listening, they are not going to react in any of the ways that you fear they might. She's going to be flattered. She's going to say thank you. She'll probably blush. And the people around her, instead of thinking that you're creeping on her or whatever, are going to think that's really, genuine, really endearing and really confident and really nice that you approached her and actually gave her a compliment. And so I want to share with you a tip that I've learned just over the last 2 weeks. I've got some notes here. Hot girls feel intimidating until you actually approach them, right? And you'll hear guys that talk about cold approach all day long say the same version of this. So this is not new information, but you've just got to keep hearing the same sort of message until you actually start growing some balls and actually approach girls, right? The key here is that hot girls feel intimidating until you approach them. And the moment that you actually start saying your opening sentence, you name your reality, you name the context of the situation, you say, hey, this is super random. I know that we're whatever. I know that we're in the gym right now. I know that wherever you are, I know that we're in a cafe, but I just noticed you and I thought that you were really beautiful. As soon as you start that sentence, you will, because the thing is, hot girls feel intimidating because she's a stranger. And so, if you have approach anxiety, it probably is because you have some fears about yourself, right? That she will think of you, right? So whatever those fears or insecurities are, you end up kind of projecting those fears onto her, but what ends up happening is that when you are talking to her in the first few seconds, you'll realize that you're actually talking to an actual person, right? Who's never seen you before, has no idea who you are, and obviously therefore doesn't have any of the same kind of negative beliefs about you that you do, right? And so because you're approaching in a socially calibrated way with a genuine compliment, she's not going to have the reaction that you are expecting her to have. She has a positive reaction, right? Hot girls feel intimidating until you talk to them. And the moment that you actually start talking to them, you'll realize that they are not intimidating because you're actually just talking to a person, right? And this leads really nicely into the next point that I want to talk about, which is that hot girls obviously get a lot of attention, right, on their Instagram, on their dating apps. You know, mostly that's where they get a lot of attention. You know, they might catch people staring at them. They get a lot of attention. But the interesting thing about this is that attention is not the same thing as connection, right? When a hot girl has, you know, thousands of DMs on her Instagram and thousands of fucking messages on her dating apps, none of those men that are simping over her, she can't actually connect with any of those men because they're just like fans. You know, because like if you see a really hot girl and you just sort of like slide into her DMs with like a generic compliment like, oh my God, you're so hot, oh my God, you're so gorgeous, it means nothing. It doesn't do anything for her, right? It's attention, it's part of positive attention, it's validation, but like she can't actually connect with you through that, right? Because you don't stand out at all from the hundreds or thousands of other guys saying the exact same thing. And so like a realization that I've had over the last, you know, couple of weeks is that hot girls, like the hotter the girl, the more attention she gets. But that actually means that the hotter the girl, the less connection opportunities that she actually has. Because if she's really hot, then there's a higher percentage of the male population that are going to be intimidated by her beauty, right? And so you might have heard this before, that hot girls can often be the loneliest of, you know, of the women in the sexual marketplace. You take a less attractive girl, men have they feel less intimidated about approaching and talking to them. And so they actually get more opportunities to connect. Right? And so this is such an important realization for you, and is that if you have the balls to actually approach, you're instantly going to stand out. It's like, especially to a really hot girl, because that doesn't happen to her very often at all. Like the hotter she is, the more attention she might get digitally, or not even just digitally, but you know, from men who are objectifying her, putting her on a pedestal, simping over her. They're fans, you know? They're not actually meeting her as an equal, or better, you know, they're actually a little bit above her, you know, because women are hypergamous. They, you know, they select mates who are at or above their sort of like level, if you like. Right? And so if you're just sending a fucking DM in on Instagram, you're not an equal. You are objectifying her, right? Putting her on a pedestal and simping, and she can't connect with you, right? And so, but if you approach her in public, if you just approach her and because nobody does that. Like if you are nervous and you actually go out of your way, right, to risk social rejection, social humiliation, like think about it from her perspective. Like if she was so beautiful, her beauty impacted you so much, a stranger, you, right? If her beauty impacted you so much that you actually had to summon the courage to go and talk to her, right? And grow as a person, man, that's going to make her feel so good about herself, right? Way infinitely better than any of the thousands of DMs she gets on Instagram or whatever, right? And she's going to be really interested in you, okay? There's also another point in this, and I just sort of want to go on a little bit of a tangent and then wrap it back around again, is that there's two realities when it comes to attraction with women, and they're both existing simultaneously. The first reality is about physical attractiveness, right? Which is that like there are like girls have varying levels of like hotness, on the out of 10 scale. Okay, clearly, and that's real, right? But the second reality is that when you actually talk to a hot girl, just like any girl, she's just a person, right? And you could approach a hot girl and find that you actually just don't really like her at all, right? I don't know, she doesn't even necessarily have to be a bitch, you just don't really get on very well together. And so you don't really have any chemistry. And so while then, after you've spoken to her, she might have a nice body or a pretty face or whatever. But if you don't actually vibe, well, it doesn't really matter that she's like physically hot to you, right? So chemistry, right, which is the stuff where actual intimacy and romance and sexual tension and connection actually happens, that's all about who a person is, right? It's not really about physical attractiveness. I'm not saying that physical attractiveness isn't important. It is. I'm saying that chemistry and personality vibing is about who the person is. And so if that's the case, wouldn't you rather vibe with someone who's also really hot? Because I can tell you now, when you approach a girl that's really hot and you vibe with her, that's the fucking best of both worlds, man. I guarantee you. It ties back in because when you actually approach attractive girls out in the wild and you actually start talking to them, it humanizes them. You realize you're actually just talking to a normal person with insecurities and fears and vulnerabilities. I don't know, girls, they're just people. They're intimidating to us before we've actually initiated contact, because we have no idea who they actually are. They're just kind of this mythical symbol of beauty to our male brain, visual brain. But the moment that you actually talk to them, you realize that they're a human, and that's when the real magic can actually start happening, right? But the secret to this is that, so if you get used to approaching hot girls, your nervous system will start to realize that hot girls are no different to anybody else. Okay? So then more and more over time, when you actually see a hot girl, you won't put her on a pedestal. You'll notice that she's hot, but you'll notice that she's actually a person doing normal person things. And because she's just a normal person doing normal person things, you just go up to her and talk to her, right? And remember what I said before? Hot girls, because they're hot, they get way more attention than less attractive women, but they get less opportunities for connection because they're hot, and so men put them on pedestals. So if you are regularly approaching hot girls and desensitizing your nervous system to the experience of approaching and interacting with attractive girls, it's just going to be like normal for you. It's not like an event. It's a non-event. And that, I can tell you now, that gives you access. Essentially, you become like a top 1% man. Because remember, like the more attractive she is, the less opportunities she actually has for real connection, because men are more likely to put her on pedestals. So if you're the type of guy that doesn't put her on a pedestal because you're used to approaching and talking to attractive girls, you are instantly like, you're the most super confident, grounded, normal, relaxed person ever. She's going to be like, fuck, and how finally someone has actually approached me. But remember, like, you're doing this all the time. And so all of a sudden, if you haven't been approaching girls, and like me, for most of my life, and my dating life was scarce, right? Scarce. I was just like scraping for what I could get. It was disgusting. I hated it. But now, all of a sudden, right, even just in 2 weeks of actually approaching hot girls, all of a sudden, I find it's gone completely 180 degrees in the other direction. All of a sudden, I find myself having more connection opportunities, like more abundance, Like more girls' numbers, more interactions, more dates, you know, more positive, like active positive sexual attention and romantic interest from attractive hot girls than I've ever had before. And all of a sudden, so it's not like I'm, you know, sort of trying to get what I can get. All of a sudden I'm having to actually be like, right, who do I have time to hang out with? What's the most logistically convenient given my lifestyle? Who do I like the most? You know what I mean? It's completely gone 180 degrees. So what I'm trying to share with you here is, like, you don't have to be the most ultimate Chad, like physically or financially or politically or socially, to improve your dating life, right? And it's simply because it takes balls to approach, right? It takes courage, it takes balls. And man, like in the world of dating apps and Instagram, like it's so rare for guys to actually, like I've approached like, yeah, about 50 attractive girls in the last 2 weeks. And I can guarantee you that almost all of them, not quite, but pretty much almost all of them have been so surprised. They're like, whoa, this never happens. Right? And so you don't have to be the most ultimate Chad guy ever to stand out. Because again, remember what I said, chemistry actually happens by who you are as a person. So if you're approaching a hot girl and then you actually find that you really like who she is and she really likes who you are, none of that's about money or looks or muscles or status or whatever, right? You don't have to be the ultimate Chad to actually to have more success. You just have to do the thing that everybody else is too scared to do, right? It's not easy. I'm not saying this is easy, but what I actually am saying is the more you do it, the easier it gets. It's like any kind of training. And so just start doing it. It is scary when you first start, but just do it. Force your legs to move in her direction. You're going to be awkward. It's going to be fucking whatever. It's going to be awkward and scary. Like, you know, I approached a girl, I think it was on like day 3 or 4 of my journey. And I went into the supermarket where I saw her, and I found her in the supermarket and walked up to her and approached her, you know, with a smile, and she took her earphone out and I said, hey, this is super random. I just saw you before but I was working, so I didn't have the chance to say anything to you. But I just thought, and then I looked her up and down, I was like, but I just thought you are so absolutely gorgeous. And I knew I'd regret it if I didn't come and say something to you. And she blushed and she smiled and she said, thank you. She beamed at me, right? And then I went to introduce myself and I held up my hand and my hand was shaking with fear, right? Shaking with fear. But like, think about it. If my hand is shaking with fear, it shows her that I'm nervous, which means that her beauty is having an effect on me. She doesn't interpret that as this man is weak. She interprets that as this man is strong, because he had the courage to face his fear and come and talk to me. Right? So if you've got approach anxiety, your mind is going to be thinking about this all backwards. Start approaching girls. I guarantee you, like 2 weeks into this journey, it's fucking way less scary than it was when I first started, man. Like, I'm dropping fucking compliments and game all over the place in just 2 weeks, having had crippling approach anxiety my whole life. So get out there, get your balls out of your handbag, okay, and actually start being a man, right? Start inhabiting your body, start inhabiting your masculinity, stop apologizing for it, and actually, you know, fucking have a little bit of an impact on, you know, the world around you. The women will love you for it, okay? I guarantee it. So drop a comment if any of this resonates with you. If you have any feedback or if you disagree with me or anything else, I'd be damn curious to hear your perspective.